thought Ryan, really got our offense jump started with her ability to knock down the three-point shot. I thought Caitlin's playmaking ability, really kind of got us going. We got into a nice rhythm in that second quarter and scored a lot of points. So a lot of good performances from today. Pleased to get the win and looking forward to tomorrow.
What if I told you a team showed up with the most brutal defensive game plan imaginable? Full court presses, blitzes, and double teams, only to have one player make the entire strategy look like amateur hour. That's exactly what happened when Caitlin Clark hit the floor against Senegal, and suddenly every plan was optional. How can one player break defenses without even breaking a sweat? Is it skill, insanity, or a glitch in the basketball matrix? Could anyone actually stop her?
A little bit about the tactics that Senegal used, and they just did not work. It didn't work against anyone necessarily long-term against Team USA. However, it really didn't work when Caitlin Clark was on the floor. Like, if you look at the plus minuses of this team, Ryan Howard, Caitlin Clark, Monique Billings, in fairness, Jackie Young didn't really play much with Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Plum, 35. Most of these were the players that played a lot of time with Caitlin Clark and Caitlin Clark on the floor.
The plan sounded brilliant on paper. In fact, if basketball games were decided by strategy whiteboards and intense pregame speeches, the Senegal coaching staff would probably be accepting a Nobel Prize in defensive innovation right about now.
The GOAT back. We got the GOAT back. Caitlin Clark is back, baby. Back like she never left. Tell me y'all saw that first three-pointer. It hit a little more rim than usual, but it went in. Caitlin Clark put on an absolute show off the bench. For Team USA. We're going to get into all of that, but she was spectacular in her senior national team debut. We got to break it all down, man.
Unfortunately for them, the sport still requires human beings to execute that plan on a hardwood floors. And one of the human beings on the other side happened to be Caitlin Clark, which is essentially the basketball equivalent of trying to stop a hurricane with a traffic cone. Because technically speaking, Senegal did many things right.
God damn! Folks, there's going to be no 2026 season. If what we just saw was any precursor to what Caitlin Clark is going to do in year 3, you know what? I don't blame Brianna Stewart, Brianna Turner, Nafisa Collier, Aneka Ogwumike if they say themselves, we can't get beat like this. This girl is coming for revenge. She's coming with a chip on her shoulder. It's going to be a reckoning. As my mom would say, it's going to be a rude awakening. Year 3 with a healthy Caitlin Clark.
Yes, you read that correctly. In a game that eventually looked like a scoreboard malfunction, there was actually a method behind the chaos. The Senegal coach came in with a plan that made complete sense if your objective was to make life miserable for Team USA's ball handlers. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more basketball stories.
So Senegal were a physical team. They had a bit of athleticism, and I thought that I don't think there was a lot of trouble when it comes to, like, say, Team USA dealing with the defense of Senegal. However, the guards struggled. So if you watched early in this game, like the starting 5 was Chelsea Gray, Kalia Copper, Angel Reese, Jackie Young, and Derek Amby. Like, within 35 seconds, they stopped. Chelsea Gray stopped taking the ball up.
The strategy was simple in theory and brutal in execution. Pressure the guards, blitz the dribble, turn every possession into a wrestling match, and make the Americans feel like they accidentally wandered into a rugby match instead of a basketball game. And for about 30 seconds, it worked. Those first moments looked exactly like what the Senegal staff probably imagined. The defense pressed full court, bodies were flying everywhere, arms were reaching like they were trying to snatch a loose balloon at a birthday party. And the guards suddenly realized they were being treated less like basketball players and more like suspects being interrogated by airport security. The pressure was relentless, the physicality was aggressive. If the goal was to make Team USA uncomfortable, Senegal achieved it immediately. Even experienced guards like Chelsea Gray looked annoyed by the constant pressure. In fact, the chaos escalated so quickly that within the first minute, the offense had already begun adjusting responsibilities. Ball handling duties started shifting around the floor as if the team were playing a spontaneous game of hot potato. At one point, it looked like practically everyone was bringing the ball up the court except the actual point guard. For a moment, the strategy was creating the kind of confusion any defensive coach dreams about. Senegal was blitzing the ball, trapping in corners, forcing players toward the sideline, and generally behaving like a group of people who had collectively decided that personal space was a myth invented by polite society.
When Caitlin Clark checked in for Team USA versus Senegal, the whole game changed. The whole energy shifted because Caitlin Clark is the face of the league, out there making everybody look better. Assist after assist after assist after assist, cashing threes, making everybody better. The gravity, getting people open.
But here is where the entire plan encountered one extremely inconvenient problem. When Caitlin Clark stepped on the floor, the defensive strategy did not just struggle. It completely disintegrated, and that was not because the plan itself was bad. In fact, the plan was actually smart. Blitzing aggressive ball handlers, forcing traps, and using physical defense against a team with superior talent is a classic underdog strategy. It is the basketball equivalent of throwing sand in someone's eyes during a duel and hoping for the best. The problem was that Clark treated those traps like they were polite invitations to start a highlight reel. Every time Senegal sent two defenders toward her, the result was the same: chaos for Senegal, open opportunities for everyone else. And the quiet realization that they may have accidentally activated the basketball version of a cheat code. Because Clark does not just handle pressure, she weaponizes it. When defenders blitzed her near half-court, she did not panic, she did not retreat. She did not dribble herself into a corner while frantically searching for a bailout pass. Instead, she calmly executed an escape dribble, slid out of the trap, and suddenly the defense found itself in the worst possible situation: two defenders committed to one player. The rest of the floor wide open, and teammates sprinting toward the basket like they had just discovered free pizza at the end of the court. That is how traps are supposed to backfire, and backfire they did, because the moment Clark slipped out of that pressure, the defense was already broken. The ball swung to the wing, then one quick pass later someone had an uncontested layup.
I just watched Team USA play against Senegal in FIBA's World Cup qualifiers in Puerto Rico right now. Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, and Caitlin Clark all on the court made me feel the most patriotic I've felt. It actually felt like Avengers assembling.
Sometimes it did not even require a second pass. Sometimes the opening appeared instantly. And it kept happening over and over again. Blitz Clark and the defense collapses, double team Clark and someone else gets a free lane. Pressure Clark and suddenly the offense looks like a perfectly choreographed fast break drill. At a certain point, the Senegal defense faced a philosophical crisis. If they stopped trapping her, she could shoot. If they continued trapping her, she could pass. Which meant the defensive options were essentially limited to two choices: get burned slowly or get burned quickly. Neither of those options looked appealing. And this is where the gap between a good player and a game-breaking player becomes painfully obvious. Because while several players on Team USA were clearly more talented than their opponents, Clark was the one player who made the defensive strategy itself completely useless. Other players beat Senegal because they were better. Clark beat Senegal because she made their entire system irrelevant. That distinction matters. Take the blitz defense, for example. Senegal used it effectively against several players. Even highly skilled guards occasionally struggled when the pressure arrived unexpectedly. Some possessions ended in rushed passes, awkward dribbles, or momentary confusion as players tried to escape the trap. Those moments were exactly what the Senegal coach hoped for. But Clark treated the same defensive pressure like a puzzle she had already solved weeks earlier. The moment the trap formed, she anticipated it. The moment the defenders leaned too far toward her dribble, she redirected the play. The moment the defense collapsed, she already knew where the ball needed to go.
Get the CBA signed. It's over for y'all. Y'all can't tell me that there's a better guard than this woman in the league, bro. Y'all really believe Chelsea Gray should be starting over Caitlin Clark? First of all, you know what? Hold on. First of all you Angel Reese fans out there, look, we on the same team right now, so it ain't no beef. But y'all know damn well Angel Reese shouldn't be starting over no Caitlin Clark. Y'all playing games.
Watching it unfold felt less like improvisation and more like watching someone run through a playbook they had memorized months ago. And the numbers backed up the eye test. Team USA was dramatically better when Clark was on the floor. The offense flowed faster, the spacing improved, the open shots multiplied like rabbits discovering a carrot farm. Players like Kelsey Plum and Ryan Howard suddenly found themselves in situations that offensive players dream about. Wide-open looks created entirely by someone else's gravity. Because once the defense committed to stopping Clark, the rest of the floor became a playground. And that is the cruel irony of defending a player like her. You cannot leave her alone because she can score. You cannot trap her because she will create for others. You cannot sit back because she will pick you apart slowly. And you cannot pressure too aggressively because she will turn that pressure into transition opportunities. In other words, every defensive adjustment eventually leads to the same conclusion: trouble. One of the most impressive moments came when the defense tried to force Clark toward the right side of the floor. The idea was simple. Push her toward the sideline, shrink the space available to operate, and force her into uncomfortable ball-handling situations. In theory, it was a clever adjustment. In practice, Clark simply used a smooth behind-the-back dribble to glide back toward the middle, completely undoing the defensive pressure while maintaining forward momentum. The move looked effortless.
I wouldn't have known she took 200 days to recover. I wouldn't have known the last time that we saw Caitlin Clark play basketball was what, July? I'd have no idea. This was a master class. Clearly the best player on the court at all times. At all times, the best player on the court. Ryan Howard had herself a day. But Caitlin Clark, clearly the best player. The team, if you can believe it, looked night and day. Clark on the floor, Clark on the bench.
It also made the defenders look like they had just tried to stop a moving train with polite suggestions. Even more impressive was how quickly she processed the defense collapsing around her. On one drive, multiple defenders converged toward the paint in a desperate attempt to stop her penetration. Instead of forcing a shot, Clark calmly delivered a perfectly timed pass to a teammate who was already moving into open space. The defense had committed 3 players to stopping one. And that one player simply turned the situation into an easy scoring opportunity. That pattern repeated all night. Senegal tried to disrupt the offense with physicality. Clark responded with precision. Senegal tried to speed up the game. Clark slowed it down just enough to find the right pass. Senegal tried to force mistakes. Clark turned those traps into assists. At some point, the Senegal coach probably realized the uncomfortable truth. The defensive game plan was not failing because it was poorly designed. It was failing because the opponent had a player capable of dismantling it in real time. And that is a different kind of problem entirely, because a coach can adjust strategy. A coach can tweak rotations. A coach can change defensive coverage. But when a single player consistently turns your best idea into an offensive highlight, there is not much left to adjust. That is the moment when strategy stops mattering and talent takes over. To Senegal's credit, they never stopped competing. The physical defense remained aggressive. The traps continued to appear. The pressure stayed constant.
The biggest thing about last night is we didn't learn anything. It's exactly what we've been saying for years and years. After watching Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, Ryan Howard, Kelsey Plum, everybody was exactly who we said they were. Like Caitlin Clark, right when she hit the court, it was super exciting, fun to watch. Some of those assists were incredible. Wow, being one of the top scorers on the team, and that's what separates her.
But the result never really changed. Clark kept finding answers, the traps kept producing open shots. And the offense kept humming along like a machine that had already solved the puzzle. By the time the game ended, the scoreboard told a brutal story. The margin was enormous. The talent gap was undeniable. Yet strangely enough, the Senegal coach was not entirely wrong about his strategy. The defensive plan actually worked against several players. It just did not work against the one player who mattered most. And that is what makes the entire situation so fascinating. Because sometimes basketball games are decided by systems. Sometimes they are decided by coaching adjustments. And sometimes they are decided by the rare player who can look at an entire defensive scheme and casually dismantle it possession by possession. That night, the Senegal coach brought a clever strategy into the arena. But Caitlin Clark brought something far more dangerous. She brought the ability to make that strategy completely meaningless. And once that started happening, the outcome was never really in doubt. Because when a defensive plan collapses against one player, the ripple effect spreads across the entire court. Suddenly the spacing gets wider, the passing lanes get cleaner, and teammates start moving with the relaxed confidence of players who know the defense is already a step behind. That is exactly what began happening the longer Caitlin Clark stayed on the floor. Like the video and subscribe for more.
At this point, what do we say about Caitlin Clark that has not been said? She played basketball for the first time in what feels like, I don't know, 5,212 days, but I believe it was mid-July last season. Of course, we know she played pretty much every game of the 13 games she played last season. She played hurt. You know, she wasn't her. She had a few moments here and there. New York Liberty game comes to mind. Opening night comes to mind, I guess, the triple-double as well. So she wasn't, you know, she had some good games, but she was not herself. And for me,
the traps that were supposed to create chaos instead created opportunities. The physical pressure that was meant to slow the offense down ended up accelerating it. Every aggressive defensive decision by Senegal slowly turned into an offensive advantage for Team USA. And the most frustrating part for the opposing bench was that none of it came from reckless hero ball. Clark was not forcing impossible shots or trying to prove a point with flashy scoring bursts. She was simply reading the defense like someone who had already watched the movie and knew exactly how it ended. The moment the trap arrived, she moved the ball. The moment the help defense shifted, she found the open cutter. The moment the defenders hesitated between guarding her shot or her passing lane, she calmly exploited whichever option they neglected. And that is the nightmare scenario for any coach, because you can tolerate a player who scores a lot. At least in that situation, you can throw extra defenders at them and hope the rest of the team struggles to capitalize. But a player who punishes every defensive adjustment with perfect decision-making is far more dangerous. That kind of player turns every double team into a gamble and every trap into a potential disaster. The Senegal defense learned that lesson repeatedly. They tried collapsing toward the paint whenever Clark attacked the lane, only to discover that collapsing meant leaving shooters wide open on the perimeter. They tried extending pressure near half-court, only to realize that one quick escape dribble could dismantle the entire structure of their defense before the play even reached the three-point line. Even the moments that looked promising at first eventually turned against them. On a few possessions, Senegal forced Clark to give up the ball earlier than she wanted. For a brief second, it looked like the pressure might finally disrupt the offense. Then the ball would swing once, then twice.
Because Caitlin Clark is back, and Caitlin Clark is better than ever. So she ended the game with 17 points, 12 assists. She was 118% true shooting, and she was a plus 35 on the court. I believe she only missed one shot the entire game. And she also played wildly unselfish. Like, she passed up a lot of wide open shots to get her teammates involved. Now, you guys, Team USA played Senegal. They blew them out by over 50 points.
And suddenly someone like Ryan Howard or Kelsey Plum would find themselves staring at the basket with nobody within several feet. Which in professional basketball is basically the equivalent of leaving a pastry unattended in a room full of hungry teenagers. Those shots rarely stay unclaimed. The more this pattern repeated, the more the game began to resemble a slow realization unfolding on the Senegal bench. The strategy that looked so promising in the film room was being dismantled in real time, and the one player responsible for that unraveling never appeared rushed, frustrated, or even particularly surprised. She simply kept making the correct play, and perhaps that was the most impressive part of the entire performance. Clark was not dominating the game through pure scoring explosions or highlight reel theatrics. She was dominating it through control, vision, and timing. Every possession felt calculated. Every decision felt deliberate. Every defensive gamble Senegal attempted felt like it had already been anticipated 2 steps earlier. By the final stretch of the game, the scoreboard had already settled the debate about which team was better. The talent gap was obvious, and the result reflected it. But the deeper story was something the Senegal coach himself seemed to acknowledge afterward. His team had entered the game with a legitimate strategy designed to disrupt elite guards. And in many ways, that strategy actually worked. It just did not work against the one player capable of turning defensive pressure into offensive precision. Because when the traps came, Caitlin Clark did not panic, she solved them. And once that pattern became clear, the entire game began to feel less like a contest, and more like a demonstration of why certain players exist in a completely different basketball category. And what do you think about this incredible moment involving Caitlin Clark? After hearing such powerful words from the Senegal coach, one thing is becoming clearer to the entire basketball world. Clark's impact on the game is truly undeniable. From her unbelievable shooting range to her fearless leadership on the court, she continues to prove why so many people believe she's one of the most exciting talents basketball has ever seen. But now we want to hear your opinion. Do you agree with the Senegal coach? Is Caitlin Clark really the best player he has ever seen, or is there someone else you think deserves that title? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, we read every single one. And if you enjoyed this video and want more shocking basketball stories, breaking news, and behind-the-scenes drama from the world of the WNBA, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.